when people complain of chronic sinus infections.
Okay.
And that is you're having, multiple, it's just not going away. They're treating with antibiotics. You got to look at mold. You got to look at fungus. Will your antibiotic kill your fungus in your nose? No, it will not. So therefore, you can't just keep treating it with an antibiotic. You got to think mold.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Barrett. I'm a board-certified chiropractic physician with a passion and emphasis in functional nutrition. We can't wait to add value to your health as well as the health of your family. Thanks for listening in to the Real Health Podcast.
Hey, before we jump into today's episode, do me a favor. If you like this episode and you like hearing from Dr. B, share it on your Facebook, share it on your Instagram. We're really trying to get this health movement out. So without further ado, let's get to today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Real Health Podcast with Dr. B. This is your host Lane. I got Dr. B here. We're going to cover a subject today that when he told me what we were going to talk about today, I was pretty excited because this is, I feel like, talked about quite a bit. And we're going to talk about mold. We're going to talk about am I saying this right? Toxins?
Yeah, mycotoxins.
Mycotoxins. First off, hello, good morning. Welcome to your show.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Haven't seen you in a while, actually.
Yeah, well, it's what happens when you go to Chattanooga and get all biohacky.
That's right. We'll do a plug. I went down and did some biohacking with hyperbaric chamber and float tanks and all that fun stuff. Chattanooga has that. We should all now jump on the bandwagon and tell Dr. B he needs to get that here at the Health Factory.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Show me the demand.
Show me the demand.
And it's Knoxville.
We're going to talk about mold. We're going to talk about mycotoxins. And I think that, again, this is one of those things that I have seen become more prevalent due to kind of the internet. I mean, I guess there's a lot of things out there that's like, once the internet came around, once social media came around, people started talking about it. It's like, oh, let's start talking about mold. Let's start talking about mycotoxins in your home. So here's some interesting statistics before you start to share and drop all your knowledge here. So at least 45 million buildings in the United States have unhealthy levels of mold. That's pretty intense, 45 million buildings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of buildings in the world, in the U.S., but that's still a lot. And then this one's pretty interesting as well. Infants who are exposed to mold in their living environments have nearly 3x greater risk of becoming asthmatic than those who did not have extensive mold exposure in their first year of life. I mean, there again, you can go back to all the episodes that we've listened to, and from inception to the woman carrying the child all the way to the first year of life, there's just so much that can happen.
That's right.
And then last statistic that I found was interesting was 93% of chronic sinus infections have been attributed to mold. I get sinus infections all the time. So throughout this episode, you are going to diagnose me and you're going to fix me within this 25-minute episode.
Well, I'll tell you that when people complain of chronic sinus infections,
okay,
and that is you're having, multiple, it's just not going away. They're treating with antibiotics. You got to look at mold. You got to look at fungus. Will your antibiotic kill your fungus in your nose? No, it will not. So therefore, you can't just keep treating it with an antibiotic. You got to think mold. And also, that's kind of like a sidebar. That's a little freebie there for you.
Freebie with the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, because really what we're differentiating is a mold allergy is not mold toxicity. It is very different. So you can be allergic to pollen and have an allergic response, hives, right? You could have watery eyes, you sneeze,
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Typical allergenic response.
So to that, with if you're allergic to something like a pollen or
yeah,
why is person A allergic versus person B? Is it because they have? I don't understand why someone's allergic to pollen. I mean, what have they done to be allergic? Are you
right.
born with that?
Well, you can have a immune system that becomes more Th2 dominant over time, which creates more of an allergenic response. Mm-hmm. Yes, that is developed, but there are so many factors involved in why that person's having allergies. I tell you, I'll ask this question. If you were on a 7-day fast, are your allergies better or worse?
I feel great on a 7-day fast.
Yeah,
So there's that going on.
All right, so
I'm breathing. It's fantastic.
exactly right. It's amazing. If you're just drinking water, it just goes to show you we just got to be more aware of sometimes environmental factors, including nutrition, and how that plays a role individually. So, yeah, it is very much a developed immune response versus genetically inherited. But yes, there are some genes involved. Going back to it, mold allergy is much different than what we're going to be discussing, which is mold toxicity. The mold allergy, again, just kind of falls in line with the general population that, may be exposed to pollen and have an allergenic response. Okay, that's you can have a mold allergy. What we're really differentiating is you could be mold toxic, and there's a massive difference. And the difference is 24, roughly, % of the population has a genetic susceptibility to where they can't remove mold toxins from their body. And that's the issue. That's the big issue, is the HLA-DR defect, or that genetic defect, that SNP. We call it a single nucleotide polymorphism. That polymorphism is inherently within someone's body that prevents them, once they're exposed to toxic mold, from removing, not mold, removing the biotoxin, the mold toxin, the mycotoxin. And it's the toxin, the mycotoxin, that's really what creates harm within someone's body. It's not mold itself. And there's a big difference between the two.
You got pretty sciencey right there for a second. I'm just going to let you know that.
Yeah.
Because you said there were 24.
Well, keep up, baby.
Well, no, yeah. So I know I'm sitting here, and I know someone's probably sitting on the treadmill or in the car. They're like, wow, that's pretty sciencey. But you say 24%.
1 out of 4.
So 1 out of 4 are they're born with this.
Genetically incapable of removing mycotoxins or mold toxins from their body, which then is what creates all of the immune suppression and the neurological harm, all of the brain symptoms, all the depression, all the anxiety, all the eczema, all the autoimmunity, all the thyroid issues, all the inability to lose weight. All of those symptoms are now falling under mold toxicity associated with that HLA-DR defect, that genetic defect.
And that's the defect, the gene is the HLA-DR. Okay, so I know my next question, but do you have something else you want to add to that?
No, I just really want to differentiate between, there's a mold allergy, okay, sneezy, and there's a mold biotoxin. And the same, and this is the issue. Husband and wife live in a house. Wife's having all the symptoms, right? She's brain foggy. She's neurotic. She's anxious. She's depressed. She's fat, not losing weight. Her thyroid's blowing up. Her gut's terrible. Okay. Husband, get a little sneezy, no big deal. Wife says, hey, I think we have mold. Well, why am I not feeling those symptoms? Because wife has that genetic predisposition to not remove those mold biotoxins properly. And that's what's creating her harm. That's what's creating the illness, and that's what's creating sickness. And that's why it's not in her head. It's associated with that genetic predisposition.
Okay. So you're saying that and let's go back to that scenario with the spouses. If you're living in a home that is statistically 45 million buildings in the United States have mold, but you're living in a house that has that, one spouse has the gene, the other spouse does not, but there's a ton of mold. Like there is a ton of mold. You're saying is the only person that's going to get the toxicity the one that doesn't have that gene, or could the other person get it as well?
The other person can if they are living a poor lifestyle.
Got it.
And so that's where, beyond the 24%, now we're starting to take a bigger chunk bite out of the population, because the liver is responsible for removing these biotoxins. The cells inherently have a antioxidant called glutathione to remove these biotoxins. And as we age, or as we are maybe not investing in our health, our liver isn't working as well. Our antioxidant system is starting to deplete. Our nutrient values are starting to deplete. We're stressed out. our gut's a wreck because we're eating a bunch of gluten, grains, dairy. Well, yeah, okay. You're probably going to become biotoxic to a degree. But it is going to affect, that's what we see. It's going to affect the younger population more dramatically because, again, the 28-year-old mom shouldn't be in this state. The 28-year-old dad and mom, the dad, okay, maybe hasn't been living, but he's still got a pretty healthy liver, still got a pretty healthy antioxidant system. But then, again, the mom or the dad is with that genetic predisposition starting to get those symptoms a lot sooner.
Again, I think I know my next question as far as the genetic disposition and figuring that out. And that's
touch your mic.
Touch my mic. We said very early in the episode, please do not touch your mic, and I touched my mic, so I apologize. How does someone figure out if they have that? Is that the next important question?
It is an important question. We just listed. Oh yeah, touch it. Yeah, get it. Uh-huh. Okay, we're back.
I can fix that in the post so nobody will hear it. So
look at that. You fancy. So okay. Symptoms. We listed a few, but it's important to kind of refresh that. Any neuro symptom like brain fog, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia. Okay, I know that sounds crazy, but those are valid symptoms. Migraines, headaches, insomnia. Okay. Seizures. Then we get into systemic body inflammation, joint pain, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. Think biotoxic related illness. GI system's trashed. Okay. Inability to sustain a workout. I mean, you start working out, super fatigued, feel like your body's going to crash. And then inflammation throughout your organ system. So we start seeing issues of autoimmunity like Hashimoto's or thyroid issues, infertility. Okay, so all of these go into potential biotoxic related illness. And how we test, you asked about testing, how we test is we're going to, okay, so this is an insight into my clinic. I'm going to go through their health history. I'm going to go through their symptomatology, patient history. That reveals about 70% of what I think is going on. If I think it's mold, phase 2 or tier 2 is, okay, patient history check. Tier 2, VCS, visual contrast sensitivity test.
You've talked about that before, yeah.
If they fail that, tier 3, okay? So we already know patient history. We already know they failed the VCS test, which is related to biotoxicity.
I think the V, say it again.
The VCS.
That's a really easy test to do.
It's online.
We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Why would someone go do that? Just real quick.
If they have the symptoms we talked about and potentially are undiagnosed.
Yes.
As to why.
Go do that, guys. If you're listening to this right now, it's a pretty phenomenal test.
Yeah. Easy is developed by Dr. Richie Shoemaker, who is the surviving mold guy, forefront expert in mold toxicity. So then we go into tier 3, and that's when we'll run lab work. We'll use real-time labs and do a urine mycotoxin panel. So they'll pee in a cup, and we'll just see all the biotoxins spitting out of their body. And we'll also do a Cyrex array pathogen 12. So we'll look at antibody load against mold. And so then, again, that's a little bit more advanced functional medicine testing. You don't really need to know that. You just need to go to a practitioner that does that. And then from there, we put the case together and say, hey, mold's your issue. Let's start healing.
But, I mean, if it's a genetic disposition, then how do you heal?
Well, genetically, they're not able to remove biotoxins.
Correct.
Okay, so again,
get out of the house.
The issue is not mold in of itself in a body.
Correct.
You could have been exposed 20 years ago to mold, Lane. Let's just say you lived in a college dorm, moldy, crappy, right? Crawling down, the drywall. And all of a sudden you start feeling like a terrible person. But, maybe a little alcohol, a little partying, a little staying up late. Not you. Of course, you love Jesus. So then you're like, okay, then you get out of that and you're like still sick. All right. And then they're like, oh, you have mono. Yeah, you have mono because you have mold. Yeah. And then you start to develop all these other viral conditions. Long story short, they start treating the mono. Now you're 25. You're still sick, but you're out of that dorm. Why are you still sick? Because that one exposure prevented you from removing biotoxins because genetically you're unable to for the next infinite amount of years unless you start removing those with binders and antioxidants and glutathione. So even though you're genetically unable to remove it, we can give you nutrients to allow your body, to remove those naturally. So we can give you binders, we can give you antioxidants and glutathione, and we can support those pathways that genetically, inherently, you don't have. We can support those specifically for you to remove them. So you can remove those biotoxins. It just takes intervention.
I think there's probably a lot of people, we're 14 minutes into this, and I would say there's a lot of people that are going, I wonder if this is me. Because it sounds as if, if you 1 in 4, that's a pretty healthy statistic.
And if you think about almost every building with drywall over the age of 10 years that isn't Florida or Arizona, dry.
Yeah.
Well, not even Florida, Arizona, desert.
Our Arizona crowd,
Iraq.
You're good to go.
Iran, right? The desert. Then there's a high probability that your building or a building that you've lived in, a home, a school, or a workplace is high in mold.
Are you part of the 24%? Have you done the testing?
So I haven't tested HLDR. I just know when I get to a mold environment, I am flu-like within 24 to 48 hours.
I feel I am too now that I think about it.
It's within 24. It's not allergy. It's my body's aching, my head is hurting, and I feel sick. And that's a big difference between a little sneezy, a little coughy,
That's so interesting.
And so that's, and this is the question I ask, Do you feel better when you're not in your home? When you go on vacation, do you feel better? When you go to again, on a trip to the beach or wherever, do you feel better? And if they say yes, I do feel a little clearer, then their home is probably a driving force of their symptoms. But yeah, absolutely. It is something that is affecting many, 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 many millions of people.
How often do you see it in the practice?
It's the cases that don't get better with anything else. It is the undiagnosed, been everywhere, have treated everything, and yet still unhealthy, still sick, still hurting. And typically, unfortunately, they're on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication because they've been told it's all in their head. And it's so easy to spot now.
Yeah.
It's so easy to spot now. It is that case. So when we see that patient history, been everywhere, done everything, still sick, on anti-anxiety medication, antidepressants, sleep medication, whatever. Like, hey, let's have a conversation here. And 9 times out of 10, it's biotoxic related illness.
Yeah, I think I'm as we sit here and talk about this, when you said that we were going to talk about mold, this has been one of those things that I've always thought about. Man, I wonder if I have a little bit of mold toxicity, because I do get some headaches and they don't go away, and it's like, I wonder what is the driving force behind that. And I'm sure there's a lot of people sitting on here too wondering, like, oh geez, like maybe this is mold. How would you tell the listeners to, like, because again, I feel like there may be some people that are like, I've got mold toxicity, and they're going to jump right to it. Like, this is like, what would you say just to be like, okay, not everyone's going to have this?
Yeah, again, go through the tier process, go through the VCS. If you test positive, then we can move forward. If you test negative on that VCS, it's high likelihood that your mold is not your driving force.
And remind the listener, like, what is that test again?
Visual contrast sensitivity test. So what they're looking at is your ability to distinguish between contrast, gray, black, whites, grays. So what we're seeing is biotoxins affect the brain. Specifically, they affect blood flow to the brain. They affect oxygenation to the brain. And when the brain doesn't have oxygenation, it's not functioning well. So when we look at your eyes are an extension of your brain. And those biotoxins, they affect your retinal artery and retinal nerve. And so that is the blood supply the oxygen to your eyes. And so what happens is when you are exposed to these biotoxins, your ability to distinguish between contrasts is lessened. Therefore, you will fail. You won't see that particular number or that particular.
wow.
Yep. Okay. And so what that is showing us is that you have a hypoperfusion or a lack of oxygen blood flow to your eyes, therefore to your brain, which is typically associated with biotoxins.
Interesting.
And if you fail a certain part, we call it the C and D section, that is more specific to biotoxins.
Wow. What about night vision?
Yeah, so if you're driving, exactly right. If you are driving at night, you're like, oh man, I can't see as well. It's contrast, right? It's dark out.
Yep.
Dark and light, dark and light. So the person that's like nighttime blindness or those are questions we ask in our patient history. Hey, do you have nighttime? Do you have an inability to distinguish between nighttime driving? Is it hard to see? Oh, okay, we might be biotoxic.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's also important to remember, not all mold is the problem, because you can eat mold. There are moldy cheeses. Those are come on, you don't like blue cheese?
Well, when I think about moldy cheeses, I saw something last night when it was on social media, and it was like Americans, and it was pieces of Kraft cheese, little squares, and I was like, what are we doing here? Like, this isn't cheese, and it's
leave it out, it doesn't grow mold. It just hardens up and shrivels.
It does. I remember back when, I guess, in grade school, when you used to pack lunches, if you left cheese in like the little package, it would just like crumble up.
Or you just did experiments and you said, hey, will mold grow on this cheese? And it didn't grow on it, because it ain't cheese.
It ain't cheese. Blue cheese, mold on blue cheese.
Yeah, so
blue cheese is phenomenal on a salad
really
with walnuts and strawberries.
A little balsamic,
phenomenal.
Maybe some figs. All right, so the deal is it's in our nutrition, but it's not unhealthy for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a certain amount of molds that really are producing these mycotoxic loads that are really damaging. We call these neurotoxins or gliotoxins. So it's important to distinguish that, right? Like classic black mold, Stachybotrys, like, okay, that one is a big one, right? And so that's why you want to test to determine. You can test your house as well.
You can, and those things are expensive.
Well, they can be, but my suggestion would be go to real-time labs where we do the urine testing, and you can look at what's called a ERMI test, and you can test your house for about $300, I think.
Wow.
That's not bad. And you just swipe your air vents and, put it in. They specifically don't look for mold, which is different.
Okay.
Call someone locally, they'll check for mold. No, they're checking for mycotoxins. It's a massive difference.
Wow. Okay.
Because it's the mycotoxin that makes us ill, not mold, right? Okay. So it's important to distinguish that.
Okay, so winding down, because you got to go see patients. Someone has the 24%, they're 1 in 4, and they fail the VCS test. Their house, they got the $300 test from any lab test now. They're miserable, and they figure out that they do have that the gene, and they can't get rid of the toxins. You come in here, we put them on binders, and you try to get them, acclimated. Is it okay to have a protocol to remove the toxins, or do they need to get out of that house?
It is. They have to stop the exposure. So they have to do a massive remediation properly, or they got to move. And you, Lane, you know me. I'm not. With patients, I'm pretty gentle in a sense of, hey, what do you want to do? And I listen and I say, okay, yeah. Like, I don't want to recommend something you won't follow, shock you, right? So I'm going to be very gentle in my approach. But this is something I'm not gentle with. You remediate your home, okay, or you move. In Leviticus, it says you burn it down. It specifically, you see this growing on your walls, okay, and you've done all these things, you burn your house. Yeah. So I wouldn't burn it, and maybe like remediate it, sell it, sling it, but move or remediate. Those are your only two options.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. Any other thing you want to add? I mean, because this has been, again, I kind of feel like I need to go back and just listen to it, and I know there's going to be a couple of questions. And guys, I know that I want to add this too. So when we post the show, we will post usually a clip or two on our Instagram page, and there has been a lot of people that have gone to the video and they've asked a follow-up question. I know on our sleep episode, on a nutrition episode, there's been some people that have done some follow-up questions. Go do that, because I know that there may be some times that I don't ask a specific question that you guys may want to know. So when we post the video on live on the show, make sure you go and you can ask a question, and we'll try our best to follow it up right there on it, or maybe we'll have a day of just answering questions, on the show or something like that to add value. So anything else you want to add before you go practice?
20,000 listeners, baby.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
I know.
20,000 downloads.
I know. This has been a wild ride. We did this one in. You got 2 minutes before you got to go do some practice and patience. My birthday is tomorrow. I'm going to celebrate.
Are you jumping out of a plane?
If I can get some buddies to go with me.
I'm sorry, man. There's one thing I don't like, okay? Heights is not fear of falling.
Oh, so you won't do it?
Woo! I don't know. I probably will, because I like to do things that I don't like to do. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so if you're listening to this show live, which we do have live listeners tomorrow, Saturday or Sunday, and you Barrett, see him, you're like, hey, you got to jump out of a plane with Lane and you got to film it. Hey, we can do it over there down in GF City. They got a
Jefferson City, bro. Ain't nothing good coming out of Jefferson City. Sorry if you're from there. That was a joke.
You just lost 4 listeners
and my office manager.
Oh, guys, thanks so much for listening to the Real Health Podcast with Dr. B. Make sure you go follow, share the show, tell Dr. Barrett he's awesome, and if he wants to jump out of a plane with me, then we'll do that. Guys, we'll see you next episode. Bye.
Before you hit X, hold on 1 second. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast today with Dr. B. 2 things that would really help the Real Health Podcast movement. 1, share it on your social media, your Facebook, your Instagram, wherever you're on a social network. And 2, if you go to Apple Podcast and you scroll down, give us a 5-star rating and give us a review. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you next episode.